your football buddy. Or you, your best man. Your worst man. You, your dog walker. Your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. That's doihaveprediabetes.org.
Wait, did they just say 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes? That's 33.33333% of adults. That means it could be me, my boss, or my boss's boss, or me, my favorite sister, or my other sister. That's 7 members of my 21-person romantic book club. Wait, the 1 in 3 could be me, my karaoke partner Carol, or my karaoke enemy Jeff. I'm going to take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Mario fue pintor más de 30 años. Cuando me dijo que se le estaban olvidando las cosas, fue difícil. Un día me dijeron que pintara el marco del lado por dentro y pinté el lado de afuera.
Yo le diría a la gente que le diga a su familia lo que está pasando con él.
Si algo se nota diferente, podría ser Alzheimer. Es momento de hablarlo. Visita alz.org/nuestras historias para saber más. Un mensaje de the Alzheimer's Association y the Ad Council.
Men in Nebraska can be set in their ways, but they can also be quick to change their minds. Just 10 minutes can be enough to step back and rethink the life-ending decision of suicide. If you have a friend or family member who's struggling with depression, talk to them about temporarily storing their guns away from their home. Paid for by the University of Nebraska Public Policy Center. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association in this station.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy. Your football buddy. Or you, your best man. Your worst man. You, your dog walker. Your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. That's doihaveprediabetes.org.
Wait, did they just say 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes? That's 33.33333% of adults. That means it could be me, my boss, or my boss's boss, or me, my favorite sister, or my other sister. That's 7 members of my 21-person romantic book club. Wait, the 1 in 3 could be me, my karaoke partner Carol, or my karaoke enemy Jeff. I'm going to take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. Next, I put it in reverse.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com.
On the internet.
KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket.
Men in Nebraska can be set in their ways, but they can also be quick to change their minds. Just 10 minutes can be enough to step back and rethink the life-ending decision of suicide. If you have a friend or family member who's struggling with depression, talk to them about temporarily storing their guns away from their home. Paid for by the University of Nebraska Public Policy Center. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association in this station.
Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay, playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
Dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza. The big one. All the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa.
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. This is Inside the Huddle with Nebraska Football Hall of Famer Jay Foreman.
Fires a pass, and it's intercepted by the Huskers at the 25, Jay Foreman. And Foreman takes it down to the 19-yard line of Oklahoma. Another big play by the Blackshirts.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
All right, welcome in Inside the Huddle. Harrison Arns on the ones and twos, but we do got Jay Foreman on the LOVIP line. Want to understand the importance of exceptional service with a local heart. Jay Foreman, how's the traffic this morning?
This morning is a perfect example why people, I guess, have a problem with the Lincoln Marathon. I'm all for it, but man, it's like you have bad timing. You're stuck in a corridor, and you're like, you ever seen those things in Harrison where they have I guess a little mouse go through a maze and they can't get out?
Oh yeah,
that's exactly where it is. Trying to drive and trying to get a break in the marathon, in the flow of the marathon, and it's miles of backed up traffic. So
yeah, good luck to everybody running. But it's relentless.
Yeah.
This day gives me anxiety ever since I've worked Sundays. I mean, it doesn't seem to matter. Yeah, I'm gonna hit at least at some point 30 minutes to worst case scenario up to 40 minutes of just sitting there. So good luck to you, Foreman. I don't know what it's gonna look like.
It's not fun. But then also, the Lincoln Marathon is obviously it's a part of Lincoln. So. Mm-hmm. You understand the day's coming. I think what they should do is probably, send out a city ordinance. Do not leave your house until noon. Nothing is going on. If you are going to be able to do anything, use a bike or something like that. That's who has the most, you could bike from, one part of town to the other faster than you can drive. And usually that's for big cities, like Chicago's and stuff like that. But, they always say Lincoln's a small town. You're getting a big city feel right now where it's straight blocking the traffic in any direction. Anything you've done, you can't get through neighborhoods, and they probably are the most frustrated because if they wanted to get out and go somewhere, whether it's by walking or bike, they can't go anywhere. So this is the first example of being straight up lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for the city and business wise, though. I mean, I got here this morning before. Oh man, it was like 6:30 a.m. and I'm on the 5th floor of my parking garages stacked up here. Luke's loving it though. The mill's selling a lot of coffee this morning. So like we said, it's might be annoying to drive around, but a nice little uptick in terms of city's income here.
Yeah, it's great just because of, a little recovery, from, the Husker games, but then also, look, big shout out, look, it's not just the runners. I mean, the runners obviously do the brunt of the work because they're running, which I can't speak for you, Harrison. I know I could not get even, it was a 26.1 miles. I could maybe get 26.1 feet getting going with. I was like, yeah, I'm done. But it's the volunteers. It's the people that come out and cheer on their friends and family. It's the early day, and I think it usually gets done probably about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I assume. When you're running for 4 or 5 hours straight, I don't know how I've never even attempted to run a half, a quarter, or whatever you want to call it. So, it's very commendable to do it and to go out and battle because, it's one thing is to go out there and to participate. Another thing to go out there and actually run the race. And so it's a one day a year. It's frustration. It's kind of like almost like Black Friday or something, go out at your own caution. But I definitely got caught up in it today and definitely not a happy camper. But Harrison, There's some people that aren't happy campers right now, and it's the LA Clippers fan.
Yep.
And, I know you're into basketball, and obviously, game sevens when you're on the road are extremely hard, and that's where, we'll get into the Warriors and the Rockets, which is a little bit different because obviously the Rockets aren't a veteran team. But, when the game was pretty close in the second quarter, and then at one point in time, you were down by 33, 35 points, that's where, with your owner in attendance, some decisions could be unfortunately made, or some guys could be let go. Because I think the Clippers started to find a little bit of a rhythm, a little bit of identity. I think it's the first time in a long time. I think Kawhi started to look a little bit more like the, last second Kawhi Leonard when he was with the Raptors and hit that crazy iconic meme versus, shot. And so I think they started to kind of gel a little bit, but I think they ran into a really good Denver Nuggets team at home, got blown out, and then, Cancun started to feel a lot. You started feeling the warmth of the Cancun beach rather quickly up there in the altitude of Denver.
Yeah, that's what really surprised me to this in that game 7 was just like how bad it looked in the second half to where, just the effort. Denver dominated in terms of effort, start to finish. Even in that first half when I thought the Clippers were pretty close and they were even leading, I think by 7, just right out of the gate from the game was even though Jokic was playing pretty bad, Jamal Murray started off slow. They were still getting all the effort plays and then just really good ball movement. And then the second half, then once everybody starts making their shots, you got guys like Gordon making, phenomenal plays. Michael Porter Jr., some really big shots. Now everyone starts feeling good. Jokic didn't play the entire fourth quarter, I don't think, correct?
Right.
Yeah. And
he didn't. And he got much needed rest.
Yeah. He got 5 fouls in the third, and they got to set him out to fourth and just threw an absolute dominant finish. So, and to your point, I don't know if it was the conditioning or what, but once again, you have James Harden out there who you want to say it's like unfair that he always gets bashed out so much for these playoff performances, but I think he finished with 7 points in a game 7 for that one. It's just like where the superstars for the Clippers were not to be found, or the role players throughout that game.
Yeah, I think, at the catch-22, you saw James Harden, had, I think over his history after a good game, especially in the playoffs, he's absolutely horrible. Now, I don't know if it's a recovery thing as far as being able to recover from the amount of output that he puts in, as far as to, be successful. But I also know that, history is not on his side. And so, as good as the Clippers played, I think it's a good chance for Tyronn Lue and the, decision makers to find a way to, either keep James Harden, he's in the same, obviously I think LeBron's a, better player than he is right now. But I think that, these guys that are towards the end of their career definitely are viable players. I think James Harden is probably, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, he's probably in the top 30 or 40 players still in the league, obviously on a consistent basis, because he's played really good at that kind of point score, for the Clippers, ball handler, volume ball handler, and then, distribute when needed. And he was more of a distributor this year. But I think the biggest thing is in LeBron's facing this, as we've seen the Lakers, the 2 LA teams, which the NBA would like to have seen one of them get through to another round, both of them didn't, is they're going to have to be willing to take a little bit of a haircut as far as the pay goes, with the assumption and guarantee they're going to go and fill some holes. Now, James Harden's a little bit different because of how he plays, and, his body and the years of not taking care of yourself and all that type of stuff, versus like the Lakers, whereas LeBron, and he has to work with Rob Pelinka and I guess Deanie Buss and whoever decides, who they go out and try to get in free agency, and maybe via trade. It's got to be a guarantee, because part of the reason why he took the max is because they weren't able to go and get anything. And so you're in really a catch-22 in both of these organizations that obviously, essentially share LA, but obviously the Lakers are very prominent. But how they lost did not look good, and obviously it was, the cherry on top for the Clippers last night and James Harden. And it doesn't matter, I feel like it doesn't matter, how old he is or anything like that. He's probably too good of a player to ever have just 7 points in any basketball game, considering how much he touches the ball. Now, is that a lack of attention to detail? Is that a lack of conditioning? Or is that skill? Now, I think it all draws back to where we're at right now, Harrison, and that's in the offseason. Obviously, he needs to rest and all that other stuff, because it is a grind for the NBA season. But I think sometimes when you're able to get away with stuff, and this is no different than a football player maybe earlier in the season or like the middle part of your career, that you don't realize that you need to, do the fundamental things and improve on the conditioning and the dedication part, because you've been able to ride that wave and maybe pass, success, whatever you want to call it. But then it comes out on full stage when you face a more cohesive team at home, on the road. And then also, let's not forget, the Nuggets do have a couple young players that can give James Harden some problems, which allows their veterans and their one veteran that, I'm going to tell you this right now, whether you like him, love him, or hate him, and Russell Westbrook, he's going to play 1,000 miles an hour. He's going to be in phenomenal shape. and he can cause you problems in a game 7 because he lives off the crowd energy and less is more with him with the Denver Nuggets. And so now you're seeing a former teammate in Russell Westbrook with the Clippers come back to bite you in the butt.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was who that I was talking about with, but when that Russell Westbrook trade went down for him to go over to the Nuggets, that just seemed like the most obvious match because especially at that point in his career, he's on a cheaper contract. You know, you'd be foolish to ever question the dude's work ethic when he single-handedly took the Wizards to their last playoff run where they really had no business being there, but Russell Westbrook was just having an unreal season. And then you match him up with Jokic. I mean, if you're going to run the floor and you're going to cut, Jokic is going to find you every single time. And that's really where the continuity of the Nuggets was killing the Clippers because every time, you know, even when Jokic was really ineffective, I think he probably started off like 0 for 5, really couldn't hit the side of the barn for a while, even airballed one. But he's just getting everybody involved. Guys like Brown as well, just by, I think he racked up 6 assists heading to the half. And then you add Russell Westbrook to where, yeah, maybe Jokic, even Murray starts off slow. You put Westbrook in the game, I mean, he's just going to give you instant energy every time. Even though, like, regular season, it says he's not that great of a defender. He ain't really that much of a three-point shooter. But when you need a hard player or a player who's going to work hard, I mean, that's Russell Westbrook every single time. And when he makes that first three-point shot, which he did last night, that's when the other team starts to sweat a little bit because his confidence just takes over. And people talk about it all the time, but he drained that first corner 3 and it pretty much became, I mean, you can make an argument that was the Russell Westbrook game. And about another guy who I just want to get your thoughts on this because it's crazy how we've gotten there. Ben Simmons didn't even play yesterday. I know his minutes have been dwindling this entire series. I think mostly maybe played his 15, but it's just crazy to think with that lineup. And Ben Simmons, you know, especially when they got a guy like Jokic out there and size and Aaron Gordon and a lot of height and Michael Porter Jr. and Brown as well. The Nuggets are a big team, and Ty Lue thought Ben Simmons wouldn't be of any help, despite Ben Simmons' best attribute being an oversized guard.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and he can kind of be a little, you know, like kind of a bigger version of James Harden going against, ideally, a slower-footed, a little bit of aging, you know, Michael Porter, you know, even though he's younger, and Aaron Gordon. But also, I think it's probably, you know, it's no different than J.J. Redick, right? When he looked down the bench and he put Kugler in there that hadn't played in like 50 games, so essentially 45, 50 games. It's an in-the-moment coaching decision, and I'm going to probably lean that Tyronn Lue probably didn't trust Ben Simmons. Then I'm going to put more on Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is at the Clippers by his own doing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you know, when you got to think the number one recruit in the nation, obviously the lottery pick and a high draft choice, lack of intent to want to play basketball or do the things you want to do, and then here you are when maybe you are welcoming a lesser role, you're not put in the game, and so it's a tricky situation. And playoffs is different than the regular season. We talk about this all the time. It's a lot different. What it is it comes down to possessions, fouls, and then timely shooting. And so that's where, a team like Denver will kill you. And if you got Russell Westbrook, focused, and also in I'm going to call it a vacuum, in the sense of you're getting the best version of Russell Westbrook because all of it isn't on his shoulders. You know what I'm saying? I think the expectations that when he went to the Lakers were too much, but then also forced too much. And, he needed a year of just figuring out where he was. And I think Russell Westbrook was fighting it a little bit, right? Because you got to think he had been essentially a one-man gang, like you said, at the Wizards. Now he's out in L.A. and probably didn't really know where he fit. And then, you didn't have management, helping him. And then it just was just a bad, quick little speed dating thing. It's and then he took a lot of the blame. And so, and also when you think about it, LA was reasonably close or recent coming off a championship. So now it's like you have to be at championship level. And so I think, Russell Westbrook at the Clippers, or not the Clippers, but at the Denver Nuggets, should be, as they move forward, a focal point, because Jokic is going to do his thing. You know Jamal Murray is going to play good for the most of the series. But if Russell Westbrook can be consistent and play like a version like he did last night, Denver is going to sneak in there into the championship. And when you think about a championship, possibly against the Knicks, Cavs, or obviously more importantly the Celtics, Jokic is the X factor, but he's the X factor because of Westbrook. So if I'm the Denver Nuggets after firing a really good coach in Malone, I think we're in the driver's seat. We got championship pedigree. We're just as big, just as physical as anybody else. And also we have an X factor that is focused, on doing what the best, being the best version of himself. And I think, Harrison, it's not just basketball. If you're an athlete, watching this, obviously a younger athlete or in college, you see a guy that's a surefire Hall of Famer, he's going down in the history book of doing something, that nobody's done since Oscar Robinson, averaging a triple-double, and made it more, fashionable. And obviously Joker's doing it as well. And he's finding a role. The funny thing about it is like, whether it's rankings in football or basketball, in order to get paid in the NBA, you have to play a role. When you think about it, you know what I mean? Harrison, when you think about all these guys that are lottery picks, they go to teams like Denver, and the Clippers or whatever, and they end up playing a role. And the better you play that role, the longer you last and the more you get paid, versus going in there and thinking that you're going to score and shoot 20 shots like you did back in 8th grade in high school.
Yeah, I mean that's the beautiful careers of like the KCPs, right? Where it's just like,
yeah,
they hop on team to team. The JaVale McGee's another great example of that. Like he from the Warriors to the Lakers. Can't remember, I missed another one as well. But some of those guys just play their role to such a great extent that they end up later in their careers more likely to get rings than they would in their actual prime, which is just crazy to think about at times. And it also just shows the players that refuse to adapt their game and what the ladder looks like. Russell Westbrook, again, kind of circling all back to him, he could still have a team to himself like the Wizards and still put up, I think, a pretty ridiculous season. Obviously nothing to the extent of his prime, but he's still a good enough player to be a legit starting point guard a lot of these teams. But he figured out a new way to carve himself out that role, kind of. And I do think that Lakers era humbled him, maybe even all that not too fair, because the role they had set up for Russell Westbrook never really made any sense. And they kind of bring him in here, and whether it's LeBron's fault or not, if LeBron's on your team and the team's losing, they're probably going to blame the other guys around LeBron, not LeBron James himself. So Russell, he took so much heat from that. And then, to go over to the Denver Nuggets, it's just worked out perfectly over there. And I want to ask you, though, like, who is the favorite in the West now? Because I thought the Nuggets' toughest challenge was going to be that Clippers series simply because of the size, but I also watched round one, and I know it was the Memphis Grizzlies, but OKC's been, let's just be real. They've been killing people the entire NBA regular season, and in the postseason, it was no different. The margin of victory, I know, for the Grizzlies, I think it was, like 18 points just throughout the regular season, and in the playoffs, it was no different. I mean, they have just been dominating.
Yeah, I'm going to go with OKC. I wasn't, so high on them just because I felt like they, a little bit of a letdown last year, but I think they learned from it. I think that's a young team that's really all bought in, their identity, the organization. I think they got it all kind of trump tight there, and they annihilated the Memphis Grizzlies. And, I think they have the Nuggets. So the problem for the Nuggets are those dudes from OKC is going to look like they're in like hyper speed, come that next game. And so, you win that first game, you're in a leg up. But I think, to be honest with you, this series right here is essentially the Western Conference Championship, I think. And this is just my opinion. I know that Golden State and Houston are about to get after it tonight and see who, comes out of there. But I don't think either one of those teams can really handle either of the teams that are going to play in OKC and Denver. So I'm going to say right now OKC is the favorite. And I think they match up with anybody in the league, and I think they've been built like that. I think they are, as long as everything, stays the same and everything's equal, they're looking, right down the barrel of their first NBA championship. So the biggest thing for them is they're playing against themselves, right? They know exactly how they like to play. They're going to be out running. They're going to defend. They got depth. They got enough size. They can stretch you at the 5 with Chet. They can be physical if they want. But now they got to make sure that they don't they got to keep the main thing the main thing. So this first game, before we go to break, Harrison, is so unique, and then we'll look up into a little bit of off-season for Husker football. What do we need to do, and what's it like after spring ball, so forth and so on. It's crazy because as much as OKC is has advantage from like rest, you can get rusty and not be game sharp. And sometimes a visiting team can come in and steal game one, and then OKC wakes up in game two. So it'll be interesting to see how Denver attacks this first. And it's always in that first quarter and a half, first half, you'll see where it goes. The closer that game is in that first half, and the longer, if it extends into a closer game, OKC could be in trouble. But we're going to take a quick break inside the huddle, brought to you by Advanced Medical at MG 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. We'll take care of all your imaging needs. We'll be right back, and we'll talk a little Husker football.
Tune in every Wednesday night from 6 to 7 p.m. as Lincoln Lighthouse's Executive Director Bill Mitchner educates listeners on the history of Lighthouse, their mission, and how you can get involved in shaping today's youth into tomorrow's adults. Every Wednesday night from 6 to 7 p.m. on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Make plans to join 93.7 The Ticket and the Amon Green Foundation for the first annual Nebraska Esports Golf Tournament on Monday, June 9th at Wilderness Ridge. It's a 4-man scramble starting at 11 a.m. that will feature former Husker greats, including Amon Green, Johnny Rogers, Niles Paul, Tony Davis, Adam Carricker, Vershawn Jackson, and more, with great prizes and great golf. Sponsorships are also available. Email Jake at theticketfm.com for more questions or sign your team up online at theticketfm.com. Early bird registration goes through April 20th, and overall registration goes through May 30th.
Things that impair you come in many different shapes and sizes. Some are the shape of beer and liquor bottles. Others look like cigarettes but aren't cigarettes at all. These are the things we know impair us, the things our parents warned us about. What we're not always aware of is our new prescription, or the over-the-counter medicine we picked up just for allergies or a bad cold. See, it doesn't just matter how much of a substance you take. If you are impaired, driving is deceptively dangerous. Don't drive impaired. Paid for by the NDOT Highway Safety Office.
At Fairway Meat Market, you're family. And as part of the family, they want to save you money on your meat and groceries. Fairway has fresh cut meats, seafood, cheese, wine, and spirits, and a friendly staff that's always ready to help you find what you need. Stop by Fairway Meat Market today to plan your weekly meals in the Rockledge Square Shopping Center, just south of 84th and Van Dorn.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Pastor Tom. Did you know there's a place kids can seek out help when they're away from home and something goes wrong? They find themselves in a difficult spot or even a dangerous situation. Maybe another child is bullying them or a stranger is following them. Perhaps on a date and things just go bad. In Lincoln, here's where they can find help. It's called Safe Place. Safe Place is a national program for children taking place in thousands of cities across the United States. The People's City Mission is sponsoring this program in our community and has set up a number of businesses, fire stations, schools, and nonprofits around the city to become safe locations where kids can seek out help. They just need to look for the big yellow sign that says Safe Place on it. Then go inside and ask for help. We will be quickly connected to them and ensure they make it back home or to whatever resources are needed. If you'd like to find out more about Safe Place and ways in which you can get involved, just go to pcmlincoln.org. Remember, when we all do a little, we change a lot.
We've been hunting these fields north of Kearney since high school. My buddy Ryan has always been my wingman, the life of the party. But I saw a change, and he got really down. Talked about his life being worthless.
If you know someone who's struggling, talk to them about temporarily storing their guns away from their home, taking care of friends and neighbors. It's what we do in Nebraska. Paid for by the University of Nebraska Public Policy Center, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Nebraska Veterans Aid is here for veterans and dependents facing unforeseen financial emergencies. Get assistance with food, fuel, shelter, clothing, transportation, and even funeral and medical expenses. If you're a veteran facing a financial emergency, apply for Nebraska Veterans Aid through your county veteran service officer. Learn more at veterans.nebraska.gov/NVA. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay. Playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
Dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza. The big one. All the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa.
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend.
Are you ready for a new opportunity? Check out Sandhills Global. Join a dynamic team where your skills are valued and your career can soar. We offer full-time positions with a 4.5-day work week, competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a positive work environment. From IT and marketing to sales and finance, we're looking for talented individuals just like you. Apply today at sandhills.jobs and take the first step towards an exciting future. That's sandhills.jobs. Don't wait, apply now.
Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
All right, welcome back inside the Huddle. And once again, we got Jay Foreman on the Allo VIP line, and we are sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Jay Foreman, floor is yours. The host, as always, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard, October 11th is their second, official breast cancer awareness walk and run. Considering that I've been stuck in the same spot here on Pioneers Boulevard trying to get to Advanced Medical Imaging or close by it. It's a good sponsorship. But Husker football, obviously, Harrison spring game and spring practice is over. I always say, spring and the spring game, whether we used to have a spring game or whatever fashion, you have it. That's more like a look, see, and celebration. It's kind of like, you're rolling out kind of like your new, version of the team and showing everybody a snapshot of what the team could have possibly looked like. And I think the most, and this is just my opinion, the iron is, forged the most from the day after spring game practice is over, whether it's like, I don't know how much time they get off or whatever, but that is when it really gets serious, because there's a countdown to a real game, countdown to when camp starts, countdown to when, positions are going to be, solidified ideally. You're going to have your identity hopefully locked in. Your identity is already there, but when you're competing in spring and there's a ton of competition at every position, because like quarterback and like Dane Key and all those. But when you lose a lot of players that have been around, whether it's to the draft or, now trying to go to the NFL, in the spring is you're out there trying to survive and survive. And what you mean is you're a hunt. You're trying to hunt the spot. You're trying to beat somebody out. Now you got to go from, I to what are we going to do? And that's a drastic change in mindset. There's nothing that can't be done. Obviously, teams all across the nation do it. Nebraska done it last year. That's why I think they were able to push through after, stubbing their toe a little bit and make a bowl game and then eventually win the bowl game. But now you got to deal with, realistic and not expectations, but the standard. And the standard is, that's the last year was the ceiling of the floor, 7 wins, X, Y, and Z. So now you're not just facing, the win-loss column, but then also the standard of football. And so you can't run away from that. You got to accept it and then obviously excel in that type of pressure and understand it's a privilege. But I think, when you go in this off season, which is, start whenever they get after it, maybe after school, is it's going to have to ramp up some. And that's just across the nation, not necessarily a Nebraska thing. I wanted your opinion on what is one thing or one position that you think that the team, I guess I wouldn't say depend on, but really need to be, clear and set by the time, you get in the middle of two-a-days in summer and fall camp.
You said what position group needs to be cleared up?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like the obvious one is who I think it should be pretty clear for Nebraska. I want to make sure that wide receiver room's right. The offensive line, I think we pretty much know, but that wide receiver room, just because I felt like the one area where Dylan Raiola, Isaiah Nayor, Jamal Banks were really struggling was just a lot of that timing, anticipation where, even when there was time, it felt like at times Dylan Raiola was just kind of waiting for those guys to get open, regardless of what route they're running, unless it was like a cross over the middle, he could anticipate a lot better, but you just didn't see a whole lot of great timing with those guys, because then all of a sudden Isaiah Nayor, he gets to the Senior Bowl and you're like, oh, where's this been? Well, it was always there. I just don't think we always utilized it. And maybe that was a little bit more Dana Holgorsen as well. The other area, if I really had to, is that defensive line. I'm going to be really curious to see how they fare. If that's an area that takes a dramatic drop off, or because I think it's going to take a drop off, with the guys that we had out there. It's just how much is it? Because if it's not too steep, I think we can manage pretty well considering a lot of the other key pieces on that defense. But that defensive line has me probably the most worried. And then again, just that connection between the wide receivers and Dylan Raiola with the new guys coming in.
Yeah, Harris, I'm a little bit on the opposite. I think I feel a little bit more comfortable with, I guess, Dylan and the receivers, getting some, continuity based on Dana coming in last year and kind of, ruffling the feathers and really amping up the standard, right? So you got to, expect, he knows what he wants to see as far as about the workload. He knows what he wants to see, from the receivers. Now, people don't realize, Dana Holgorsen, cut his teeth as a receiver coach. So he knows exactly what he wants to see from his receivers to make his quarterback play well.
I got to tell you one thing, though. The key word you said there, though, is when you were talking about Dan and the Chiefs, is you got to expect that's the part. I don't expect, a whole lot of too much anything anymore. I think me and I'd say majority of fans, I mean, it's gotten to the point is I don't expect it until I at least see it once. Until I see it consistently, then I'm not going to expect it.
Right.
I'm just still a little bit shaky on it. Until I see those new guys do it on a Saturday, I'm just never going to fully come to expect seeing it on a consistent basis.
Yeah, rightfully so. I mean, that's that's what fans should always do until you see it actually not just once. You probably want to see it, over. I always say at least six games through the season. I think my more mindset is I feel more comfortable with that eventually getting going and maybe faster based on the background of Dana and obviously a little bit of a look-see what you saw last year. The last quarter of the season when he was, I guess, the official offensive coordinator. I think the biggest thing is for the team, for me is just the offensive line and the defensive line. Now I think with the offensive line they had the pieces. I think the biggest thing is they got to get them all healthy. Which you had, Latowski out, and then you're waiting on to see if Turner Corcoran, Teddy Prohaska, then obviously Gunnar Gatula to go with the new pieces, and obviously with Justin Evans going to center. Getting that mesh right, because I think the faster they mesh and get some continuity, not just with your starting five, but just say I'll call it your starting 7 or 8, then I think that's where the team goes to the next level, because I think that people don't realize the better your offensive line is, the faster that your young, inexperienced defensive line will become better, because they're going to battle each other throughout the off season. And then obviously through summer and fall camp. And so they're kind of tied together. And then as far as the defensive line losing a lot of experience, it's not just experience on the, they were playmakers. Ty and Nash, carved out a nice little combination together and obviously led to Ty getting drafted. Nash is, going to probably, hopefully stick a couple years in the NFL. But it's, losing to Jamari Butler, who I think was a good, fit in that 3-3-5 to where he could do a little bit of everything and it was pretty physical. It's losing, every other game or every so often that James Williams providing that pass rush. And then obviously then you have the emergence of Elijah Judy, who has to not only step up from being a situational player behind all those guys that I just mentioned, but he also has to find continuity between him, Cam Lenhart, Van Poppel, and the new guys that come in and how they all mesh together, not only playing their roles, but who plays in the leadership and lead dog role, and not by be week to week. You know, I think if everybody embraces that every game I got to go out and play my best game, it might just be your game that you got to lead the guys in, into success and on the defense line, because we don't have a bell cow right now, and there's nothing wrong with that, because at one point in time, the same questions that we have, about the guys that are playing right now, we had the same questions about Ty and Nash when they were in a position that they were going to have to step up. So the opportunity's there. I think the more, I guess the biggest thing is who's going to take advantage of the opportunity. And also, Harrison, I want to go back to you and the receivers. Here's also, one of the things that people don't realize. Like, I think they really accumulated a lot of talent, right? Mm-hmm. You got Barney, Key, Hunter. You got the emergence of, I think, Mims, the freshman, and then you got Mose, the other freshman come in, right? So that's 5 I just named right there that are really, really, really guys that with a lot of talent. 2 freshmen, super sophomore, and 2 veteran guys. One's actually an established sophomore coming from Cal, and obviously Dane Key coming in, and I guess going to be the lead dog.
We still got guys like Janae Bonner as well. I mean, you got some bigger, muscle guys too. If you need it in the blocking game.
But he's not a guy that's going to be a skill set. He's more like a
slot
situational guy, right? And that's fine, and throw him in there. The bigger part is now overall, if you look at them, they're more talented than they were last year, potentially, right? And it's hard because I feel like, Jalen Lloyd and Malachi Coleman, they didn't get the same start that these guys are getting right now, right? You get what I'm saying as far as Dana Holgerson and a wide receiver coach. That's fine. But now how does it all mesh? That's the bigger thing. How do we get guys carved out in the specialty roles? We got to know who's our number 1 option, who's the number 2, who's number 3, and who's the guy that can continue to do the little things that might not show up in the stat sheet that actually is part of the game plan. Because it's not just who you play. See, everybody's going to focus on like the first 3 games, essentially home games, right? The most important thing, Harrison, is when you get on that plane, because the roster's cut down. So then special teams comes in. So then who in the skill position group is an effective player in special teams, because it's not just offense, defense, special teams, because that player could be just say you're number 6 on the depth chart or 6 in the skill position as far as like tight end, wide receiver, group, but you're the number 1 or number 2 returner. You're on that plane and say Jay Foreman's at home. So once you get on that plane, in my opinion, the standard and expectations need to go up some, because you have to make game-winning plays. And so that's just as important as what you said is like, okay, I got to see consistency, right? They kind of go hand in hand. The consistency will be in what you do in like summer and fall camp, but the consistency is going to be who steps up every week, week in and week out, as far as in that position group, who you can count on. Because just because you're not getting a lot of looks in like week 7 and 8 because people are game planning for you, that doesn't mean you can't be effective on special teams and have a positive outcome on the outcome on the game and play a big role. That's going to be huge, and that's the identity, that's the foundation, and so that's where they have to forge. And obviously you got to have some continuity with Dylan Raiola, in knowing that Dylan's got to understand like who likes passes a certain place. How can I get them into the route? Because look at it like this. How you throw a pass to a tight end is different than a slot. And here's the difference. A tight end is a bigger body, obviously, receiver. He has a bigger catch radius. He has a bigger, ability to absorb contact. Well, if you're getting it to a little scat back, right, or a little slot receiver, then that's a little bit different, because I got to lead him through and away from contact. Because let me tell you something. Whether it's Bonner or anything like that, and you get hit, in the Big Ten, it could be good night Irene, and you might get some sleep medicine, versus a tight end that can absorb it, run through it, and then continue along to go through it. Because, like, you think about a Carter Nelson, right, who's a matchup problem for somebody like me and when I was playing, his ability to separate but then also absorb contact while he's running pass routes is different than, let's just say, a young freshman in men's coming in is like 185 pounds. So that's what you're probably talking about. Then I'm thinking about, okay, well, how do we put certain players in against certain teams? Because, for instance, when you play against Iowa, right, late in the season, doesn't matter if it's in Iowa City or Nebraska, the game plan and the situation in the skill position group is a lot different based on how Iowa plays. They're going to play cover 3. They're going to be physical. They're going to keep everything in front of you. So then you're looking at bigger guys that can actually run through contact and run after the catch. And so it's going to be interesting to see what guys step up and improve on their game this time, but more importantly, what position groups really show drastic improvement. So young fans like yourself, Harrison, you can feel more at ease. You know what's funny, Harrison, when I talk to you, it's very, very refreshing because it's actually real-time thought process in where Nebraska is, for a certain, I guess, age group of the fan base, right? It's not old guys on my lawn or anything like that. It is, because this is all you know versus, I was fortunate enough to be here during the great time, but then also go play pros and then kind of really see a holistic view of college football and understanding what maybe I'm looking at. And I'm a former player versus you. You're seeing this in real time. This is all you know. And it's really refreshing because as much as I'm thinking like, okay, have a little bit of patience, I got Harrison over there is like, our patience is thin and I want it now. And that's actually, it's good for me. And, ideally, hopefully you get a little bit of it, a little bit for me as well, because, you're not wrong. I'm not wrong. You're right. And I'm right. And that's the great thing about, watching, college sports and obviously being able to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm glad it's refreshing for you to get. It's a painful way to look at things as a result of all these years. And of course, the cherry on top. I don't know. Are you a big NHL guy, Jay Foreman?
I love NHL, and this is the best time of the year.
Well, yesterday, real quick, just to get off my point here, and then I'll let you throw it to break. Cherry on top yesterday, right? And I'm sorry if everybody knows this. Like, Bulls been a tough time. Husker athletics, men's basketball, football, been absolutely brutal. And then my NHL team now, Colorado Avalanche, ripped my heart out yesterday in a Game 7. I think they had that thing sealed. Shout out to the Dallas Stars. They move on. That's round number 1. But anybody who's NHL fans out there, if they watched, that was a crazy finish between the Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. I mean, the Stars came flying back right at the very end there. Just a gut-wrenching loss for the Avalanche. But, yeah, I want to get that out there as well because we don't talk enough NHL, I don't think, on these airwaves.
Yeah, Harrison, I grew up a Minnesota North Stars fan, and obviously Dallas Stars fan. I'm a Wild fan, so I was keeping that to myself because I know I give you a lot of grief about your Bulls and Chicago Bears.
Oh, that's where I can get you. On the Minnesota Wild. That's good to know.
Yeah. So, the thing is, like, the NHL, I think is the hard, winning the Stanley Cup, in my opinion, I think is the hardest championship to win because they go 7, and they're grueling games, but it's very, very exciting. But, I think the bad omen for the Avalanche was they were kind of playing in too close proximity of the Nuggets. You can't get two, you can't get both teams to win. I think that's bad timing, of the two sports leagues. You got to maybe delay and give a little bit of a day of rest for, one team or not.
Yeah, anxiety had to be high in Denver. Whatever those watches are called, whoever, anxiety was up in Denver yesterday. 2 Game 7s.
Yeah, but Harrison, it wears you out a little bit. And also a thing for the Avalanche. I don't know the player's name. I know he has a little bit different name. I mean, obviously he's from Europe. Remember the player, he got slashed. And I saw it because I watched the NHL kind of docuseries, and he's been out for 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
He was like the leader of their team when they were a couple years ago when they were supposed to, odds-on favorite to potentially win the Stanley Cup. He came back in late in the season in this series. Unfortunately for him, he's facing father time, as far as that he came back to play, get into a Game 7, lose. Now he has to start his offseason again, but hopefully he's happy and healthy in the Avalanche. I like the Avalanche. I like one of the best things before, I know we're going a little bit long, one of the coolest dudes I ever got to meet was Patrick Wall. He's a wild man now. I didn't realize goalies have a different mindset, and they're a little crazy. Now, obviously, you're taking pucks in the face, so I guess you have no fear. But I grew up watching him, and then obviously to get to meet him was a pretty cool experience. But look, there's a lot of sports on. There's a ton of it to watch. Enjoy it. It's a good time. Hopefully the weather starts to come around from here in Nebraska. But what's coming around is this break. We're going to take a quick break. Come right back. Inside the Huddle, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging. We'll be right back to put a bow on this bad boy.
Men in Nebraska can be set in their ways, but they can also be quick to change their minds. Just 10 minutes can be enough to step back and rethink the life-ending decision of suicide. If you have a friend or family member who's struggling with depression, talk to them about temporarily storing their guns away from their home. Paid for by the University of Nebraska Public Policy Center. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association in this station.
Are you ready for a new opportunity? Check out Sandhills Global. Join a dynamic team where your skills are valued and your career can soar. We offer full-time positions with a 4.5-day work week, competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a positive work environment. From IT and marketing to sales and finance, we're looking for talented individuals just like you. Apply today at sandhills.jobs and take the first step towards an exciting future. That's sandhills.jobs. Don't wait, apply now.
Are you a skilled mechanic looking for your next opportunity? Nebco is hiring. They're looking for experienced mechanics to join our family-owned team. They offer competitive wages, great benefits, service trucks, OEM-level diagnostic software, and career growth opportunities. Apply today at nebco.com. Positions include lead and A-level mechanics for the Nebco shop. Learn more at nebco.com. If you're driven and ready to grow with a company that's been around since 1908, apply today at nebco.com.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job,
not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
Or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner? Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity, not to make friends, but just to get something to eat? Or a retiree who fell ill and had to choose
between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
My early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take, but it gave my mom and me more time to plan together.
Talk to your family about seeing a doctor. Go to alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
I could tell something wasn't right. My buddy Jake just wasn't himself. He seemed down. I was concerned about him and asked if he was thinking about suicide.
We all have a role in preventing suicide. Know the warning signs. They may not seem like themselves, be depressed, withdrawn, stressed, agitated, or talking about suicide. Call, text, or chat 988 for 24/7 support. Paid for by the University of Nebraska Public Policy Center, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Hi everyone, Kendall Warnock, A1 Automotive in downtown Lincoln. Spring is here, summer is fast approaching. With weddings, vacations, and weekend getaways on your mind, do not let car issues prevent you from getting where you need to be. Car problems shouldn't be something that you put up with. Let us get you back on the road in comfort and safety. We diagnose all makes and models from Porsches to Hondas, Toyotas, and Chevrolets. We fix a variety of issues with all of them with our talented techs and our experienced staff. A1 Automotive at 11th and L, downtown Lincoln, always honest answers.
Hi, this is Pastor Tom. Did you know there's a place kids can seek out help when they're away from home and something goes wrong? They find themselves in a difficult spot or even a dangerous situation. Maybe another child is bullying them or a stranger is following them. Perhaps on a date and things just go bad. In Lincoln, here's where they can find help. It's called Safe Place. Safe Place is a national program for children taking place in thousands of cities across the United States. The People City Mission is sponsoring this program in our community and has set up a number of businesses, fire stations, schools, and nonprofits around the city to become safe locations where kids can seek out help. They just need to look for the big yellow sign that says Safe Place on it. Then go inside and ask for help. We will be quickly connected to them and ensure they make it back home or to whatever resources are needed. If you'd like to find out more about Safe Place and ways in which you can get involved, just go to pcmlincoln.org. Remember, when we all do a little, we change a lot.
93.7 The Ticket is proud to provide listeners with daily opportunities to win contests and prizes on our airwaves, and would like to take this opportunity to remind you of a couple rules. All participants must be 21 or older and must wait 30 days after winning a prize to participate in another contest. Once you win, you have 30 days to pick up your prize at the KNTK Studios, 1040 O Street in Lincoln, or your prize will be forfeited. Thank you for participating in our contests, and thank you for listening to 93.7 The Ticket.
Start your Sundays off right with Jeff and Nicole Essink on Fitness Fanatics. Jeff and Nicole discuss health and wellness, how to achieve fitness goals, and more through the life of gym owners and gym goers. It's Fitness Fanatics from 9 to 11 a.m. on Sundays on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Early break.
Get run over, something's going to happen. But as you got closer to him, you saw he was wearing a big smile. And I thought, oh, he's got this totally under control. my whole opinion changed of the situation. It did. I thought, there's this crazy guy out in the middle of the road. He's got to get this figured out. And then when I saw his smile, I was like, oh, no, he's got everything figured out. He's got it all figured out. I mean,
with Steve Sipple, Jake Sorensen, and Bill Bush from 6 to 9 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
All right, welcome back in. Harrison Arns on the ones and twos. And once again, with about 5 minutes left, Jay Foreman joins us on the Allo VIP line. All right, Foreman, like I said, I got a few minutes left here. I'll let you guide the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, good stuff today. Obviously, Harrison. Once again, we want to wish all the good luck to the people finishing up the Lincoln Marathon, volunteers, so forth and so on. Creating constant havoc, but you know what? It's only one day out of the year, and everybody knows it. Well, I will tell you, any advice next year for Lincoln, just say, you know what? It's a city ordinance. Do not travel from 7 a.m. to about noon while they're doing it. But, Harrison, I wanted to ask you, Warriors, Rockets. Obviously, we just talked about Denver closing out, blowing the Clippers out. Do you think the Rockets, even though they're young with a couple of veterans that have, Van Fleet has a championship pedigree, do you think they'll be able to close out the veteran-led Warriors with Jimmy Butler and obviously Steph Curry and Draymond Green?
Yeah, I mean, sorry for the Warriors fans out here, but this one feels tough. I think this might be another 3-1 upset from Curry after, because Warriors were up 3-1. I don't know, like, is that game 5, right? It felt like the Warriors were okay, kind of coasting, feeling like, all right, we don't got this one in the bag. And then they show up for game 6. And they, once again, just kind of get it felt pretty comfortably Rockets. I know it wasn't a huge blowout, but it is pretty comfortably Rockets led the whole time. And they always had their control on it. And it kind of just feel like the Warriors have lost all the edge that they had mentally is just gone now. Now it feels like we're back to an even playing field, and it's back in Houston. You know, it's one thing to get a young team that you beat early in a series. It's another thing when you get that young team in game 7. They got nothing to lose at this point. And they know they're the 2 seed, but they also know, you know, if they looked at any of the spreads and money lines, that the money was not moving in favor towards those guys. So, and they're deep. Jalen Green as well. He was pretty woeful to start off early. He's playing a little bit better. So if Green can, you know, even just play to his average regular season self, not even an upgrade version of whatever he's been, because he's just been that bad in the playoffs. Yeah, give me the Rockets.
Yeah, I think unfortunately for the Warriors, I mean, I think the uptick in both the, you know, like when those big trades with Luka and obviously Jimmy Butler, the Warriors looked like they were really rolling. Not to say, and unfortunately, that injury to Jimmy Butler kind of messed up their rhythm, even though they had the lead, and you thought that they were going to be able to close them out at home. Mm-hmm. Now, Van Fleet was hitting everything, you know, that he looked at, so that kind of was a, you know, a little bit of an outlier. But either way, now they get him at home. And I always say this, Harrison, you know, I think things have changed now since the NBA is, you know, guys are so young and there's not that true competitiveness in between teams, you know. I think a younger team, the longer the series goes, they actually gain more confidence, because I think they spend the first 4 or 5 games trying to figure it out, you know, like, okay, you know, what time do I need to get to the arena? Holy smokes. There's about 3 times more cameras and all that type of stuff, right? And the pressure, every possession counts. Well, now they're used to it. So now they're just out there playing. And so that's what I think you saw in that last game. I think you saw the defense of Thompson. I thought you saw Van Fleet really step up and be in that role that he's kind of brought in for and being that veteran to get him to Game 7. Now look for Van Fleet to really let Jalen Green get off early, because I think if Jalen Green gets off early, it's over for the Warriors because everybody else can fill in the hole. So I'm going to pick the underpoint. I'm going to pick the Rockets. I respect the Warriors, but, Houston, I like Houston Rockets as well, finish them out. So what's also finished out is Inside the Huddle. Once again, Advanced Medical MG 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Appreciate Harrison being able to adjust to the Lincoln Marathon. Jay Foreman, Harrison, we'll holler at you next week.